In other news now, the Minister of Interior, Ralph Aregbesola, is expected to meet with state governors to agree on the mass release of at least 30% of inmates from custodial centers across the country. Mr. Aregbesola says the interface was necessary as more than 90% of the inmates were being held for contravening various state laws. According to him, over 70% of the police, the 75,635 inmates at present are awaiting trial. The minister said the federal offenders in the system were far less than 10%, adding that the bulk of people in custody were being kept under the legal jurisdiction of their respective states. The minister also added that the decongestion of the 253 custodial centers nationwide was necessary as some of the inmates have no reason to remain in custody. Now let's talk to legal practitioner Bayo Akinlade. He's the former chairman of the NBA Ikorodu branch and convener of Duty Solicitors Network, a nationwide body tasked with protecting the rights of pre-trial detainees. Thank you for joining us on the news this hour. The Minister of Interior is looking at alternatives of ensuring that less people are occupying the custodial centers illegally. What do you consider to be the legal framework to make this happen, saying that the load seemed to be within the state government?
It doesn't really add up because if you're talking about the congestion, because most of the inmates there are there because of state crimes committed within the state, then it really makes no sense except you want to have state prisons and distinguish between federal prisons and state prisons. So, and then you have to consider who are the agencies that make this arrest before they go to courts, which of course are also state courts. It's a federal agency, the police, and we don't have any state police. So what the minister was saying, actually, I wouldn't understand how distinguishing between crimes committed, state crimes and federal crimes has anything to do with prison decongestion.
But the minister is also saying that there are quite a number of inmates who have no reason to remain in custody. A particular inmate was tried. A judgment order was given recently for someone, I think for 7 years thereabout, and found out that he had already stayed beyond that in prisons. Isn't there a way and manner? Don't you see the state governors doing something in that regard? There is what they call the prerogative of mercy. There is perhaps what they can do to ensure that people who have stayed way beyond the crimes they've committed are let go.
Well, this exercise takes place every year in every state. Um, you have the governor's committee on prerogative of mercy looking into this. You also have the respective Ministry of Justice also looking into this. And above all, you still have the chief judges of each state going ceremoniously into the Nigerian prisons to release inmates. But these are usually annual events or once in 6 months. What we have on ground is that the Nigerian police and the army and other enforcement agencies are arresting people every day. And every day people are being arraigned in court, and every day they are going into prison custody. So if you have a program that only occurs once in a year or once in 6 months, I don't think that's enough to any of those programs can tackle what the minister wants to deal with. And above all, even if we do this exercise and we reduce by 30%, what happens the day after? Unless we have some serious mechanisms in place to curtail uh, the abuse of power by the police in arresting, and except to have other initiatives also in place. Some of them are in Lagos already. For instance, the DPP filtering system, where people can not just go and be arraigned by magistrates without going through the DPP filtering system to make sure that those crimes allegedly committed are valid crimes and they have enough evidence to prosecute. So we have a long way to go.
Indeed, it would seem that there is something fundamentally wrong with our criminal justice system if some 70% of our inmates are awaiting trial, many of them who are first or minor offenders. But I'd like you to speak to the need to begin to evaluate this situation, particularly when you consider a situation where there are other alternatives to sending people to jails. Usually, what we do is punitive rather than corrective. There's community service where minor offenders can be subjected to. How involved do you see the state government in this process?
Well, I can speak for the Lagos state government. There are quite a few innovations here in Lagos. For instance, you have the restorative courts system where the alleged perpetrator can seek some mediation between himself and the victim. There's also non-custodial sentencing also in place in Lagos, where small petty crimes, once you've been pleaded guilty, you can do some community service. And those initiatives in Lagos, and of course the DPP filtering system, which attempts to just not even allow some cases, some alleged offenses get into the criminal justice system through the courts. So we need actually a robust kind of intervention, which includes technology. Also, that is being done also in Lagos, where they have a crime directory. So unless you have this in place, where people's data are being collected and at the police station level and at the courts level, we're still going to have a situation where the prisons, the correctional facilities appear to be congested. And let me just go further. It's not that they're congested per se. The congestion can be dealt with by having additional correctional facilities. What we have even in Lagos is what was built in the 60s and maybe early 70s. What we need is more correctional facilities. For instance, in Lagos does not have more than maybe 15,000 inmates, whether they have been fully prosecuted or awaiting trial.
I hear you, Mr. Akinlade. I'm afraid we have to go now. You're saying we need more correctional facilities. It's also important that we pay attention to the quality of correction that is taking place within the four walls of these prisons, because usually most inmates return to the community worse than they came in the first place. Bayo Akinlade is a former chairman, NBA Ikorodu branch and national convener who's joined us on the news at this time. Thank you so much for your thoughts.
Thank you.